All right, welcome to another episode of The Carpool Critics. My name is Nicholas.
My name is Jessica.
And I'm Ryan.
And we just got out of seeing Quentin Tarantino's ninth film.
Yep.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Once Upon a Time, ...
Oh.
in Hollywood.
Can't forget that ellipsis. Yeah, it's basically a film of two friends in Hollywood, just at different points in their life, with the backdrop just being the lead up to the Manson family murders. And I think that's the best way to describe that movie without spoilers or getting anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's this kind of... like a lot of Tarantino movies, there isn't really like a straight line that you can draw through it.
Exactly.
It jumps around a lot. And then in the end, it's not really about what it was to begin with.
Right.
But kind of the bulk of the movie, I think, is following Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, where Leo is this kind of aging action Hollywood star, and he's kind of getting to the point in his career where he used to be the leading man, and now he's just sort of the recurring villain on one-off TV shows, and trying to figure out, is he going to have a comeback, is he not, what's he going to do with his life? And Brad Pitt is sort of his best friend slash stuntman slash kind of just guy who hangs around him and drives him places.
Yeah. But yeah, would you guys recommend this movie?
Not in theaters.
No?
I think it's really necessary to see it in theaters. I would recommend this movie, yeah.
Okay, I mean, that's fair. There's nothing really about it that you need to see in a theater if you can wait. I mean, I think if you've been a fan of other Tarantino movies, I think this one is definitely worth seeing. It's, like, oddly restrained for a Tarantino movie, which is not to say that it's restrained by any other standard you could apply, but not as much gratuitous blood and explosions and whatnot compared to other Tarantino movies. Definitely very focused on kind of the characters and sort of not so much a character arc, but just sort of getting to know these characters over time and in various situations. It's kind of just a sequence of events, and then it sort of ends in a bang, and then the movie's over.
Exactly. Well, I'm right there with Ryan. I only recommend this movie if you like Tarantino movies. If you don't, you won't know what the heck's going on or why he's doing certain things. But I would recommend it if you like Tarantino movies. Well, now we're just going to go into a discussion with a bunch of spoilers of what happened in the movie. And so if you want to stick around and listen to that, we'd appreciate that. If not, you can skip ahead to previews of other movies you'd like to see. But yeah, for you guys, one of the big things that I really enjoyed, and I don't know if you guys caught it, about how this movie was shot.
Like it was an old movie.
Well, there's even more to that. Like the nuance of it is, it was more for me, like you said, the way it was shot with the 1950s, 1960s way, 70s, 80s. You had like all these different things, but also even the way that they were driving, how they looked at things, it reminded me of like, especially the driving scenes, because there's a lot of driving scenes, like Streets of San Francisco, Bullet. I thought it was a really cool homage to just all those old classic films, and I know Tarantino is a big fan of film. That's the reason why he stayed in the business this long. But also, even to the point where when Sharon Tate goes to see her own movie in Dean Martin, and was that Sharon Tate actually?
That was Sharon Tate. That wasn't Margot Robbie.
Right.
Yeah.
But even that scene where she's fighting that Asian lady, and the Asian lady presses those buttons to lock her in.
Yeah.
At that point, I actually felt like that it was like a little click that Tarantino was saying to the audience, okay, I got you. You are now locked into this movie. And then even to the very end of the movie where Leonardo DiCaprio walks through the gates into Sharon Tate's and Roman Polanski's house, that was him being accepted into it, almost like him going into Hollywood heaven almost, which is what he wanted to, which is be accepted.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things that he used, because Tarantino does use things around him to help with the story, or tell his story or his version of history. And the one thing that I liked is when Leonardo DiCaprio is sitting next to that little girl actress when he's shooting that pilot for Lancer, and he's reading that book, and he's telling her about the plot of the book, which is this Bronco rider, and he was the best Bronco breaker in the West, and he ended up getting older, he ended up getting thrown, and he hurt his hip, and now he lives in pain, and he won't be able, and he can't do his job anymore. So now it's just showing like how he was the best and now he's not, so how does he get over that? and the whole time he's explaining it, you're thinking that it's him, but then at the end of the movie, you realize it's actually Brad Pitt, because he gets stabbed in the hip, and he actually says, and he actually says, I'm going to be walking with a limp now, but, you know, and it's like, as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, man!
Oh, wow, foreshadowing. Yeah, I did not catch that at all.
I didn't catch it either.
Brad Pitt's character was interesting. I don't know that he had much of an arc at all.
No.
But,
No.
He was just kind of there, but he was a cool character.
Yeah, he was the constant of it.
He did have a constant flow, and I do appreciate that, because he did show that he was a good friend. Mm-hmm. And for somebody in Hollywood, especially at that time, I mean now still, it's like you need that person who always has your back and is like, no, you're good. You're so and so. You're somebody. You're the best actor in the world. And he has that person. He has that. Leonardo DiCaprio has that person in Brad Pitt. So I liked his character, even though you do realize that he has a backstory, even though they don't really explain.
They leave it ambiguous as to whether or not he actually is a horrible murderer.
Yes,
or
whether
just
he
misunderstood.
did or did not kill his wife.
Yes.
That is the question. Oh, that's funny. Because when the director's shooting the pilot and he's telling Leonardo DiCaprio, it's like Dark Hamlet. So the question is, did he or did he not kill his wife? That is the question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I totally read way too into that, but anyway, moving on.
I mean, Tarantino definitely puts a lot of little things out there. I don't know how intentional the meaning behind those things are, but
yeah,
going back to what you said, Jessica, about what Tarantino likes to do, like pop culture references a lot. But I always liked what he did well in this movie was how the music told the story.
Yeah.
As well as the radio.
Yeah.
The radio was a big part of what kind of pushes forward to kind of draw you into this time frame, and not only that, but also to let you know that it didn't matter who you were, everybody was still listening to the same radio
Yeah.
station.
I did like when they were talking about like the old westerns, we were talking about spaghetti westerns and how spaghetti western, like nobody does spaghetti westerns, and that's how Clint Eastwood got his start pretty much, is he was in the spaghetti western. Everybody did westerns in the 50s and 60s, and I love 50s and 60s westerns. So it was seeing them and how they shot it, and especially with what was the Outlaw something, the TV show that Leonardo DiCaprio's character did. That one I thought was interesting because the way that when they were showing how it was shot, and then they had the shadow of the main character, and he pulls out his gun. I'm like, that's so what it is. It's really cheesy, but at the same time with the music, because that's what you were saying, Nicholas, like how they would get people involved is more with the music behind it. That's how you get sucked into it. I mean, even still now you do get that emotion with music, but that's how they would get it with westerns. Is it was usually, I mean, other than dialogue, but they had silence, but then they would get the music to come in and draw you into it with the suspense. And
yeah, I mean, Tarantino is like, if he's anything, he's a master of pop culture nostalgia.
Yeah.
Yes, and he definitely sold it. Actually, one of my coworkers saw this movie, and she said that she highly enjoyed it because it brought her back to her childhood. And the Laugh-A-Palooza, even though it was in there for a split second, she goes, I totally forgot about that. And she just like was like those types of shows, and it brought her back, and it just like it really made her nostalgic. So he did a good job.
Ryan, what do you think of the character, or how they brought back famous actors and actresses like Steve McQueen and Bruce Lee and...
Oh, that was so funny. Yeah, so they had this scene with Damian Lewis as Steve McQueen, and I like Damian Lewis, so that was really funny to see him. I was not expecting that. And again, he's just in there for a minute, but yeah, it's just this, it's not so much like a conventional movie as it is just sort of a string of like, oh, hey, here's a fun thing, and the end of it, you had a good time, and that's kind of maybe what a movie should be.
Yeah.
I will say this, I did read an article that Bruce Lee's daughter did not appreciate the Bruce Lee part.
I mean, yeah, I can understand that. It was not very flattering.
It was more of the fact that they were they portrayed him as this person that he wasn't, because he, as he says in Enter the Dragon, his fighting style is the art of fighting without fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And when Brad Pitt has this flashback to when he fights Bruce Lee, it makes it sound like he was antagonizing the whole thing, which that's not what Bruce Lee was. So I can see her point, but
Yeah,
at the same time she does say, like, I see what he's doing, but that wasn't my father, and so I can understand where she's coming from, but she also understood where Tarantino was coming from.
Yeah, Tarantino kind of takes Bruce Lee and sort of turns him into a blank canvas for this sort of, his idea of this kind of blowhard, self-important kind of martial artist who takes himself way too seriously.
Yeah. Well, I did think that it's funny, because if you think about it, they had the martial artist part of it and the fighting, like he does in Kill Bill.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of westerns like he does in Django Unchained. And then he has that World War II moment where he killed all the Nazis like he does in...
Yeah, he definitely...
in Inglourious Bastards. So...
yeah, so I mean, this definitely...
it's an homage to his movies, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and because there is that... I don't know as much about this, but there's this fan theory, or maybe it's a fact at this point, that all of his movies take place in the same sort of alternate timeline, where pop culture is much more polarized and society is much more violent in various ways. And in a way, this sort of sits in the middle of that, because in the Tarantino-verse, pop culture is so important and so central, and this is sort of the pop culture machine of that world that we're getting a peek into.
Yeah.
Actually, not until you said it, but this actually kind of reminds me of, at least the ending part of it, reminds me a lot of Django Unchained, in the sense of, it gets to a certain point where there's like a really good resolution and everything. Like there wasn't really like any highs or lows, like violence-wise, like Tarantino violence-wise.
Right.
And then it's like almost Tarantino forgot, oh yeah, I have to have gratuitous violence in this movie. Like he did with Django Unchained. With
there was gratuitous violence in Django Unchained.
There was,
before.
but I mean, like at the very end, it was just like
that was
the finale of a fireworks show.
Oh yeah, Django Unchained had as much, if not more, violence than any other Tarantino movie. It just was entirely concentrated in the last 15 minutes. Yeah, actually, I was thinking about that comparison too, and in a way, I kind of liked the way he ended this one better. It's been a long... Than Django Unchained. It's been a long time since I've seen Django Unchained. I think I've only seen it the one time. But I remember with Django Unchained, the ending felt a little gratuitous to me, which feels silly to talk about to say as a Tarantino movie. Mm-hmm. But I remember there being a moment just before like the real bloodshed happened, where I was thinking, okay, now the story's sort of reached a conclusion. You can have not a happy ending, but you can have an ending, and then they just go into full Dark Hamlet, kill everyone mode, and then everyone's dead and everyone's worse off than they could have been if they ended it before, which, I mean, I can see he was kind of making a point and then also having violence, which is also sort of the point. But I did appreciate in this one that the violence was very gratuitous, but it was also more restrained. I mean, since we're doing spoilers, like only the bad people died in this one, which is maybe a first of a Tarantino movie where only the bad people die.
That was funny though, because when what's his name, Jay Bering? No, Jay, the friend of Sharon Tate.
Oh yeah. I don't remember
Jay
his name.
Sebring.
Yes.
Jay Sebring. So he goes and he's like, so what happened? And then Leonardo DiCaprio's character is to explain to him what had happened, and then goes, well, is everybody okay? And then Leonardo DiCaprio goes, well, I mean, the murderers aren't.
The hippies aren't.
The hippies aren't.
Yeah. So the ending of the movie basically kind of pulled like an Inglourious Bastards, where they sort of rewrite history in a way to...
So the Manson family murders, they attack Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio's character instead of Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, and all of them. So they actually do go to the neighbor's house, or to their house. And so at the end, there's that conversation after all of the Manson family is killed, because they don't actually succeed in the murders. So then Jay Sebring comes out and starts asking what happened, and then Leonardo's character ends up being brought into Sharon Tate's house, and he meets everybody who actually was killed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So they all live, and surprisingly to me, Brad Pitt and Leonardo also both live, and the Manson intruders die horrible, horrible deaths. So it's this sort of like alternate history, like revenge fantasy in a way, like the end of Inglourious Bastards. But, and then at the same time, I thought it was really funny that, like you were saying, when Leo's character comes out and just kind of summarizes what happened as, like, oh, these random hippies just sort of broke in and they tried to kill us, so we killed them at the end. It sort of takes this power that the Manson family murders had and just completely disrespecting it and just completely portraying it as nothing. Also, when he gets the quote wrong of, I'm the devil and I'm here to do the devil's work, or however that quote goes, and then he's reporting to the cops and he can't remember the quote. And it's like this very chilling, iconic quote in real life, and it's like, it will never be remembered because they already forgot it.
Well, he was also high as a kite.
That's true, but...
that was so funny when Brad Pitt smokes a acid dipped cigarette, and he then has to go and try to feed his dog just before all of this happens, and he's telling his dog to sit on the couch, but then he sees his hand and then he just starts moving it around, and he tells his dog, he's like, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah. So in the climactic fight scene where Brad Pitt and to a lesser degree Leonardo DiCaprio
he did not do a crappy job.
No,
he did not do a crappy job. He did a very good job.
Yeah. So in the climactic scene where Brad Pitt and to a lesser degree Leonardo DiCaprio just completely wreck the crap out of. I don't know what the rating of this podcast is, so I will say that they just completely destroy the Manson family intruders. They're both drunk off their butts, and Brad Pitt is also high as a kite on acid.
And they still take him down.
And they still take him down. It is very gratuitous and very petty and very, very satisfying.
I like what you said, though, because it kind of reminds me of, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but like with you saying him rewriting history, it's almost like we're watching Quentin Tarantino's version of The Twilight Zone. Imagine if you would a place where things happen that didn't actually happen, and the world of I actually like it was the Tarantino-verse.
One thing I was thinking about, and I don't know if it's a very good comparison, but one thing I do remember from Django Unchained, that was my favorite moment in Django Unchained, is when you have the KKK riding out, and they're all trying to see out of their hoods, and they can't because they're just these bed sheets with, like, some guy's wife cut the holes in, but she cut them wrong, so they couldn't see out of them. And I thought that was the most brilliant thing maybe I'd ever seen in a movie. I mean, not really, but kind of, because it takes this thing, this very iconic cultural symbol of hate and fear and evil, and makes it stupid and ridiculous. And I think in the same way, what they did with... so it takes this weight of evil that our culture has been put into our culture permanently, and kind of turns it into this ridiculous thing that...
should be laughed at.
That should be laughed at, exactly. And I think that's sort of the same thing that they did with the way they treated the Manson family murderers.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Especially that scene where they're shaming Brad Pitt leaving the ranch, and then the guy stabs Brad Pitt, or Leonardo DiCaprio's car that Brad Pitt's driving. And
I did think that was dumb, because all they wanted him to do was leave, and
right,
then he stabs the wheel, so then now he can't leave.
I thought the same thing. Like, do you want me to leave, or do you not want me to leave?
Sorry, Nicholas, go ahead.
No. Well, I just like just him being the crap out of them just because they're doing stuff. And I agree with you guys. I was thinking the exact same thing.
But to continue with what you were saying, it's like he tells the guy to change the wheel, and he doesn't, and then he beats him up, and then all the women are coming over, and they're like, why did you do that? It's like, well, why did he do that? Like, he started it, and that whole sequence I thought was good, because then it kind of shows the ridiculousness of it, of people have their own ideas. And like with the Manson family murders, they want peace, they want all this stuff, but then they do acts of violence too. It's like, well, how is your way peaceful? You're still doing violence as well.
Yeah, I mean, this movie definitely sets out to portray them as these very stupid adolescent hippies, and then also kind of, I don't know, just like they bad teeth and bad hair and just dirty feet, like these kind of bumpkin type people that are not people to be afraid of, but people to just sort of not care about.
Yeah, they did show them as being these adolescent teens who just all they do is sit around watching TV. Bonanza, FBI. Bonanza,
oh
woo!
yeah, everyone watches FBI in the Tarantino verse. It's the most amazing show ever.
Yeah, I love the Bonanza reference because I grew up watching Bonanza with Little Joe.
Yeah, they never actually showed Bonanza in the movie though. Maybe they couldn't afford the rights to that one.
Probably. You can't even get it on Amazon.
Really?
Yep.
I like with Tarantino that people continuously want to work with him. Because you got, like Brad Pitt, Inglourious Bastards, Leonardo DiCaprio, Django Unchained. Even if it's like small bit parts, people are in it. Like Kerry Russell in this one.
Yeah, there were a lot of people
Kerry
in this
Russell's
one.
in this one?
Yeah. Or what's his name? He was in Fast and Furious just recently.
Kerry Russell is a female?
No, not Kerry Russell. What was the movie I'm thinking of?
Which?
So remember
what?
The one that where Brad Pitt threw Bruce Lee into the car of the lady, her husband. What's his name? Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell.
Yeah, there you
Yes.
go. I got the first initial right and the last name right. Yeah, Kurt Russell with Hateful Eight, and then his favorite one. What's his name? The guy that was in Kill Bill, Reservoir Dogs.
Oh yeah. Oh frick.
Yeah, like a small part in it.
He did have a small part. He has dark hair. In Reservoir Dogs, he was one of the names.
Mr. Pink, Mr. Black, Mr.
Yeah.
He was.
Oh crap.
Anyway, he's always like a staple in all of Tarantino's films.
Who was he in this one?
He was only in it for like maybe 30 seconds, but he was one of the set guys. He was on set. He just kind of, but
which guy in Reservoir Dogs?
He's kind of tall. It's not Tim Roth, but he's kind of tall, dark hair.
That was funny actually. I don't know
Was
if you
it
guys
the guy who
got
cut the
that.
guy's ear off?
I've seen it once with you.
Okay.
So.
I don't know that actor's name. I recognize faces. I don't know names. I mean, I do believe the guy he was Mr. Blue in Reservoir Dogs. He's the one who cut the cop's ear off. I think he's been in a couple other
Probably.
things.
He usually plays the edgier, harder, angrier guy.
Yeah, he's kind of slick back hair, kind of greaser looking guy.
Yep.
Yeah, that guy. The character he played in Reservoir Dogs was Vega, so he was.
Michael Madsen.
Yes, him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he plays, what's his name, Vincent's brother, or not he plays, because that's one of those other trivia things, is that in Pulp Fiction, who was the main guy in Pulp Fiction? Not Samuel L. Jackson.
John Travolta.
John Travolta. Yeah, so that guy, what's his name? Sorry, this is a bad line. Yeah. So Michael Madsen's character in Reservoir Dogs is the brother of John Travolta's character in Pulp Fiction.
Oh.
Because they're both named Vega.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
There you go. That was a long path to get there, but I'm glad we made it.
Good job.
Me too. Actually, I don't know if you guys saw, but Tim Roth was in the movie.
I did not, but I heard you guys. Were you talking to your neighbor?
Yeah, I was talking to the guy that was sitting next to me.
Where was he in that?
Actually, he was not in the movie.
Oh.
It was just an old-timey thing that the guy told me about that they used to do is when people really wanted to be in the film, but they just didn't make the cut, what they would do is they would put the name of the actor and then put in parentheses cut on there. So it actually says in the
the credits?
Oh,
in the credits it says Tim Roth cut.
Oh.
How funny!
I wonder if that was just as a joke.
That's probably it. Because again, the whole thing is just an homage to just
Right.
that era. And
Well, even when they did, was it Columbia Pictures? That's the old Columbia Pictures. So that was, I already got excited when I saw that. I was like, oh, it's gonna be one of these films.
Yeah, I mean, and then even ending with the title card and the way they did the credits was very, very 60s.
Yes.
especially with the smoking ad at the very end.
Oh, that was so funny.
I love it. This tastes like crap.
But, anything else you guys want to add to it, or?
Not really.
No.
It was a fun romp of a Tarantino movie with a kind of nice, satisfying ending. It's a good movie to just sort of throw on in the, not necessarily in the background, but like, I wouldn't put this in the top Tarantino movies of all time, but it's definitely, worth worthy of being in the library.
Yeah. What about you, Bubba?
I probably would put this higher up for me in a Tarantino film, but that's just because there isn't that much gratuitous violence in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I could probably sit down and watch this again.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But in my own home, which is funny because I still really like Django Unchained, which is, like you said, gratuitous violence. But I just love the little humors that they do in that one,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the same here, and it's exactly what you said earlier, Ryan, which is they take these things, these cultural hates, or these cultural things of people hating other people, or these iconic quotes that are supposed to strike hatred and fear, and they completely destroy it, and that's probably why I like those films a lot. Same with Inglourious Bastards. But.
Yeah, I definitely do like this one, and I'll definitely want to watch it again, and I expect to keep liking it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I recommend it. Like I said earlier, if you like Tarantino movies, you have to go see this. But also, if you like just the history of film and how far we've come, and just the homage to it, I think you would enjoy this film as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
That was one. Sorry, real fast though. That was one thing that I really appreciated was when they were shooting the scenes. You never actually saw the people behind the camera. So when Leonardo DiCaprio forgets his lines and he says line, you just hear it from the camera's perspective because you as the viewer are the camera. So you wouldn't actually see the crew behind. And I did like how Tarantino shot that.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry.
No worries. Well, now we're just going to move on to the what we saw during the trailers, what we were excited to be seeing upcoming. Ryan, do you want to start us off with?
Yeah, sure. So I was particularly interested by a movie that I did not know was in production until I saw this trailer. It is a new Kingsman movie, or The King's Man, as it's apparently called. It looks to be a prequel set during World War I. And I didn't realize that it was a Kingsman movie until the very end when they showed that it was a Kingsman movie. And it was really interesting because it starts off with a very iconic World War I scene of the muddy battlefield with the churned up barbed wire and everything, and then you start seeing all these crazy shots of Tsarist Russia and battlefields and all these things going on, and Ralph Fiennes is in it and looks very good. So yeah, I'm interested to see that. It looks like a good cast and a good premise.
Yeah, actually, I'm surprised now with more and more with World War I films becoming more prevalent in the theater.
I mean, I think we've told just about all the World War II stories there are to tell at this point, so I think World War I deserves a little bit more attention.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially because the 100th anniversary of the end of the war was last year.
That's a good point, yeah.
What about you, Bubba?
I am actually, this was the first, I knew the movie was coming out, but this was the first time I saw the trailer. But it's Mr. Rogers. No, A Beautiful Day.
Beautiful Neighborhood.
A
Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Yes.
That's the Mr. Rogers film. And I love Mr. Rogers because I remember growing up with Mr. Rogers, and also Nicholas and I actually do the SNL quote that Eddie Murphy does. It's like, "This is how you enter the door in my neighborhood. Who is it?" I mean, I love Mr. Rogers, and I do sing the "Oh, won't you be my neighbor" every now and then. So I'm very interested in seeing that. However, when they were showing the trailers, that was very interesting. And what movie they showed right after Mr. Rogers, this lovely family film of Mr. Rogers and this beautiful story, and then they go into a red band of showing...
It's called Good Boys.
The Good Boys, where it's these tween boys cursing and trying to figure out kissing and learning about sex, and it's like... Yeah, this is not what you want to show after showing the trailer for Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, that was a wild trailer. I mean, basically, I never heard of this movie before, and I still have a hard time believing it exists. But apparently, it's from the same guys who did Superbad. So basically, imagine Superbad, but like way raunchier even than that. And these are like middle school kids doing and saying all these things.
It's like they got high and said, "What? How can we screw up Stranger Things?"
And they show that after this very wholesome, peaceful movie of Mr. Rogers and like bringing you back to your childhood, and then they show this tween movie, and you're like, "What the heck is this?" All three of us looked at each other in the movie theater and like, "Is that just happened?"
Yes, I think that's what we would call tonal whiplash.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the Mr. Rogers movie looks like it's going to be really good. Definitely, probably a tearjerker.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna bring my tissues.
I mean, I remember reading recently that there's no greater honor in American society than to be portrayed by Tom Hanks in a biographical movie.
That's very true. Very true.
What about you, Nicholas?
I think the movie's called Knives Out. It's a whodunit film with a lot of really good actors: Toni Collette, Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Christopher Plummer. But it's by Rian Wilson or Rian Johnson.
Rian Johnson,
who did Looper and Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And it seems like it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, I think Jessica and I both thought it was Clue until the very end when they gave it a different title.
Yeah, when they said Knives Out, and I was suspecting it was going to be a different one when they said this is a different whodunit.
That's true.
But I don't think you heard me because I may have said it too quietly, but I was like, is this Clue? And then at the very beginning, and then when it was at the end, and that's when I looked at Ryan, I was like, I thought it was Clue, and he goes, me too!
Yeah, definitely that sort of very tongue-in-cheek locked room murder mystery with a bunch of like wild characters and a detective trying to figure out who the murderer is.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that's all we have for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, Ryan, coming back and joining us for this movie.
Happy to be here.
And those listening, if you just like, share, and subscribe. It's been a review of Quentin Tarantino's ninth film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I've been Nicholas.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Ryan.
And it was the Tarantino verse.
Bye.
Bye.